The chandeliers of the Sterling Tech Networking Gala cast golden light across marble floors so polished they reflected the designer gowns and tailored suits of Silicon Valley's elite. Chen moved through the crowd like a shadow, her camera raised, capturing moments she would never be part of. At 25, she had perfected the art of invisibility. Behind the lens, she was safe, an observer never observed. Her worn Converse sneakers squeaked softly against the pristine floor as she documented tech executives laughing over champagne. Their watches worth more than her annual rent. She had almost made it through the evening unnoticed when she heard his voice. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. Emma, there you are. Marcus Lowe's tone carried across the ballroom with practiced projection, the voice of someone accustomed to commanding attention. Emma's stomach dropped as heads turned. Marcus stood near the entrance, phone already raised, his followers witnessing everything in real time. For 100,000 people watching. I can't believe you actually showed up here. Guys, this is the girl I told you about. Emma's hands trembled as she lowered her camera. The crowd had begun to shift, sensing drama, phones emerging from pockets and clutches. Marcus's smile was sharp as a blade. His designer suit immaculate, every inch the influencer who had monetized authenticity until the word had lost all meaning. You really need to let go, Emma, Marcus continued, his voice dripping with false concern. It's been 3 months. The obsessive texting, the manipulation. I tried to be kind, but you're making this difficult. He turned to his phone, addressing his audience directly. This is what happens when someone becomes too clingy. I gave her chances, but she tried to use me for exposure. The accusations landed like physical blows. Emma's vision blurred at the edges as whispers erupted around her. She could hear the hashtag forming in real time. Hashtag clingy Emma. Her professional reputation, already fragile, was crumbling with every passing second. Clients were in this room. Potential clients. People who would never hire the desperate photographer being publicly humiliated by her ex-boyfriend. That's not. Emma's voice came out barely above a whisper. That's not true. See? Still can't accept it's over. Marcus shook his head, the picture of wounded patience. His followers were eating it up, comments flooding his live stream. Emma could see phones everywhere now, all pointed at her, recording her shame for posterity. Panic seized her chest. She needed this to stop. Needed something, anything, to shift the narrative. Her gaze swept desperately across the ballroom and landed on a man standing apart from the crowd, watching the scene unfold with an unreadable expression. He was tall, perhaps early 30s, with dark hair and gray eyes that seemed to cut through the chaos. His suit was understated but clearly expensive, and unlike everyone else, his phone remained in his pocket. Emma didn't think. Thinking would have stopped her. She crossed the space between them in seconds, her heart hammering so hard she thought it might crack her ribs. Please, she whispered, looking up into those gray eyes. Please, pretend to kiss me. I'm begging you. The stranger's gaze moved from her face to Marcus, then back again. Emma saw the calculation there, the brief hesitation. Then something shifted in his expression, recognition of desperation, or perhaps his own rebellion against the performance surrounding them. All right, he said quietly. His hand moved to her waist, firm but not rough, and he pulled her closer. The last thing Emma saw before her eyes closed was Marcus's expression shifting from triumph to confusion. Then the stranger's lips were on hers, and the ballroom erupted. The kiss was nothing like she expected. It wasn't performative or shallow. It was deep, convincing, and utterly consuming. Emma's camera dangled forgotten from its strap as gasps and exclamations rippled through the crowd. Camera flashes exploded like lightning. When he finally pulled back, his arm remained around her shoulders, steady and grounding. Emma's mind had gone completely blank. She could hear the chaos, Marcus sputtering, questions being shouted, phones capturing every angle, but it all seemed distant, underwater. The stranger's gray eyes held hers for a moment, and she saw something there she couldn't name. Then he turned to face the crowd, his expression calm, almost bored, as if kissing strange women at galas was perfectly routine. I think we're done here, he said, his voice carrying the kind of authority that made people listen. He guided Emma toward the exit, the crowd parting automatically before them. Emma's legs moved on autopilot, her entire body trembling with adrenaline. She had entered the gala invisible, and she was leaving as the center of a scandal she couldn't begin to comprehend. Behind them, she could hear Marcus's voice rising in protest, but it was already too late. The kiss had been captured from a dozen angles. By morning, it would be everywhere. Emma Chen had just gone viral for all the wrong reasons, and she didn't even know the name of the man who had saved her. Emma woke to the sound of her phone vibrating itself off the nightstand. She groaned, reaching blindly for it, her head pounding from a night spent crying into cheap wine. The screen showed 847 notifications. Her photography business page had 3,284 new comments. Her personal Instagram, which she'd kept private with barely 200 followers, now showed 15,000 follow requests. Her hands shook as she scrolled through the headlines dominating her feed. Mystery woman steals kiss from tech CEO at Sterling Gala. Who is Emma Chen? Inside the viral moment everyone's talking about. Influencer Marcus Lowe claims ex staged kiss to humiliate him. Emma's stomach lurched. She stumbled to her bathroom and splashed cold water on her face. But her reflection in the mirror looked haunted. Dark circles under her eyes. Hair a tangled mess. She looked exactly like someone whose life had exploded overnight. Her phone rang. The caller ID showed a potential client. Correction, showed a former potential client. Emma answered with a hollow feeling in her chest. Emma, hi. I'm calling about the Morrison wedding next month. The bride's voice was tight with false cheerfulness. I'm so sorry, but we've decided to go in a different direction. The drama with your situation, it's just not what we want associated with our special day. Telling and preparing this story took us a lot of time. So if you're enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. The call ended before Emma could respond. 2 more cancellations followed within the hour. By noon, she had lost 3 jobs that represented 2 months of rent. Marcus, meanwhile, was doubling down. His Instagram story showed him looking wounded and philosophical, talking about toxic relationships and people who use others for clout. The comments were vicious, calling Emma everything from desperate to calculating to a dozen worse things. Emma was curling into a ball on her worn couch when her phone rang again. Unknown number. She almost didn't answer. Miss Chen? This is Catherine Morrison, assistant to Adrian Steele. Mr. Steele would like to meet with you this afternoon, if you're available. Say, 3 o'clock at Café Prive. Emma's mind went blank. Adrian Steele, the gentleman from last night's gala. He thought you might want to discuss the situation. The call ended, leaving Emma staring at her phone in disbelief. She opened a new browser tab with shaking fingers and typed the name. Adrian Steele, 32, CEO and founder of Steele Technologies, a cybersecurity and AI firm valued at $3 billion. Self-made billionaire who'd built his company from a college dorm room. Notoriously private, rarely photographed. And last night, he'd kissed a complete stranger to save her from humiliation. Why? Across the city, in a penthouse that overlooked the bay, Adrian Steele stood at his floor-to-ceiling windows, jaw clenched as he listened to James Thornton's assessment. Every tech blog has picked it up, James said, pacing behind Adrian's desk. Your face is plastered across social media. The board is concerned. Gerald Monroe called 3 times this morning. Let me guess, Adrian said without turning. He wants to know why I'm jeopardizing the Sophia arrangement. Among other colorful phrases, yes. Adrian finally turned to face his COO and oldest friend. James was 53, silver-haired, with the kind of calm that came from surviving decades in cutthroat business. He'd been Adrian's first investor, back when Steele Technologies was just an idea and a borrowed laptop. What do you want me to do, James? Apologize for not letting that woman get torn apart by a narcissist with a camera? James's expression softened slightly. I'm not saying you were wrong. I'm saying there are consequences. The board meets Friday. They'll want answers. Then they'll get them. Adrian. I'm meeting with her this afternoon, Adrian interrupted. The photographer. We need to get ahead of this. James studied him with the assessing gaze that had always seen too much. Be careful. Your instinct to help people has gotten you hurt before. The reference to Victoria was subtle but unmistakable. Adrian's jaw tightened. This is different. Is it? Adrian didn't answer, because he wasn't entirely sure himself. Last night, he'd attended the gala hoping to avoid exactly this kind of attention, to blend into the background and escaped the constant pressure from his board about marrying Sophia Monroe. Then he'd seen the woman, Emma, being publicly eviscerated by her ex, and something in her desperate eyes had reminded him of what it felt like to be trapped by someone else's narrative. So he'd kissed her, impulsively, the first unscripted decision he'd made in 3 years. Now, watching his phone light up with messages from board members, investors, and his grandmother, Adrian wondered if that impulse had been rebellion or self-destruction. Café Prive occupied the ground floor of a building owned by one of Adrian's companies, which meant they could secure a private room without press interference. Emma arrived 10 minutes early, her palms sweating as she clutched her worn camera bag. She'd changed 3 times, finally settling on dark jeans and a simple blouse. The nicest clothes she owned that didn't scream, trying too hard. The host led her to a back room where Adrian Steele sat at a table, somehow making the casual act of drinking coffee look like a board meeting. He stood when she entered, and Emma was struck again by how his presence seemed to command space without effort. "Miss Chen, thank you for coming. I think under the circumstances, you can call me Emma." Her voice came out steadier than she felt, especially since you've, seen me at my worst. Something that might have been amusement flickered in his gray eyes. "Adrian, and last night wasn't your worst. It was desperation meeting opportunity." Emma sank into the chair across from him, suddenly exhausted. "Is that what we're calling it? Because my phone says we're calling it a scandal. Which is why I asked you here." Adrian leaned forward slightly, his expression serious. "We have a problem. Your ex-boyfriend is spinning a narrative that makes you look unstable. I'm facing questions from my board about why I kissed a stranger at a public event. The media has decided we're either a romantic drama or a publicity stunt." "I'm sorry," Emma said miserably. "I never meant. I'm not looking for an apology. I'm proposing a solution." Emma blinked. "A solution? We continue the relationship. Publicly." The words hung in the air between them. Emma was certain she'd misheard. "You want to what? Make it real. Or rather, make it appear real." Adrian's tone was businesslike, as if he were proposing a merger rather than a fake relationship. 6 months, maybe less. Long enough to neutralize both our problems. Your ex loses credibility if you're in a stable relationship with someone of my profile. My board stops pressuring me about Sophia Monroe if I'm clearly committed elsewhere. Emma's head spun. "This is insane. We don't even know each other. Which is why it would be a business arrangement, not a romance." Adrian pulled a sleek tablet from his bag and slid it across the table. On the screen was a document, professionally formatted, with terms and conditions. "I'm prepared to offer compensation. Debt relief, professional support for your photography business, protection from online harassment. In exchange, you attend events with me, maintain the illusion of a relationship, and sign an NDA about the arrangement." Emma stared at the contract, her heart hammering. "You're serious?" "Completely. Why me? You could hire anyone. Someone who actually fits into your world." Adrian's expression shifted, became almost gentle. "Because you're the only person in that ballroom who wasn't performing. Everyone else was wearing a mask. You were genuinely afraid, genuinely desperate, and genuinely kind enough to say please, even when you were falling apart. That kind of authenticity is rare. It's also exactly what I need people to believe about my choice of partner." Emma looked down at the contract, her mind racing. It was insane, transactional, utterly mercenary. And yet, 3 clients had dropped her this morning. Her landlord had warned her yesterday about falling behind on rent. Marcus's campaign was destroying what little professional reputation she'd built. "I need to think about it," she whispered. "You have until tomorrow." Adrian stood, pulling a business card from his pocket and setting it beside the tablet. "My personal number. Call me with your answer." He left her sitting there, surrounded by expensive coffee and impossible choices, wondering if she was about to make the biggest mistake of her life. Emma brought Olivia Park to Steele Technologies headquarters because she'd learned long ago never to sign anything without her best friend's legal expertise. Olivia had taken one look at Adrian's contract, raised an eyebrow, and said, "Well, this is certainly not how I expected our Tuesday to go." Now they sat in a conference room that was all glass and steel, overlooking the San Francisco skyline. Adrian sat across from them with James Thornton at his side, both men projecting the kind of calm authority that came from controlling billion-dollar empires. Emma felt like a child called to the principal's office. Section 3. Olivia said, tapping the contract with one perfectly manicured nail. Compensation structure. You're offering to pay off Emma's debts, which total approximately $40,000. That's generous. But what happens if this arrangement damages her career further? Where's the protection clause? James leaned forward. The NDA protects both parties. The NDA protects your reputation. Olivia interrupted smoothly. I want a clause that guarantees active support for Emma's photography business. Not just money. Introductions to potential clients. References. Access to events where she can build her portfolio. If you're using her to solve your board problem, she deserves more than hush money. Adrian's expression remained neutral, but Emma saw something shift in his eyes. Respect, maybe. Agreed. We'll add a clause about professional development opportunities. And the duration, Olivia continued. 6 months is vague. What are the specific conditions for ending the arrangement early? When the board stops pressuring me about Sophia Monroe, Adrian said. Or when the negative press about Emma subsides. Define subsides. Numbers. Metrics. Olivia's voice was sharp as glass. My client needs clear terms, not fuzzy goalposts you can move whenever it's convenient. Emma watched the negotiation with a growing sense of unreality. They were discussing her life like a merger, complete with KPIs and performance metrics. When Olivia demanded a higher lump sum payment for public appearances versus private dinners, Emma wanted to sink through the floor. I need a moment, Emma said suddenly, standing. With Adrian. Alone. Olivia and James exchanged glances, then filed out of the conference room. Emma waited until the door closed before turning to face Adrian. This is insane, she said, her voice shaking. We're negotiating a relationship like it's a business deal. I feel like I'm being bought. You're being compensated for services rendered, Adrian corrected, but his tone had lost its edge. There's a difference. Is there? Emma wrapped her arms around herself. Because right now, I feel like a transaction. Another line item in your corporate strategy. Adrian stood, moving to the window. For a long moment, he said nothing, just stared out at the city below. When he finally spoke, his voice was quieter. 3 years ago, I proposed to someone I thought I knew. Someone I trusted. She accepted, then sold my company's proprietary technology to a competitor for $10 million and a VP position. It nearly destroyed everything I'd built. Emma's breath caught. She'd read about the Victoria Lang scandal during her research, but hearing it from Adrian made it real in a way tabloids never could. Since then, Adrian continued, every relationship I've had has been a negotiation. People want access to my money, my connections, my influence. They smile and lie and pretend, and I do the same, because it's easier than being vulnerable. This contract. He turned to face her. This is the most honest relationship I've had in years. No pretense. No hidden agendas. Just two people helping each other survive. Emma studied his face, seeing past the CEO facade to the exhaustion beneath. That's the saddest thing I've ever heard. Perhaps. But it's safe. Safe isn't the same as real. Real is dangerous. Adrian's gray eyes held hers. Real gives people the power to destroy you. Emma thought about Marcus, about how she'd loved him until she realized he only loved his own reflection. About how trust had turned to betrayal, and how she'd spent the last 3 months rebuilding walls around her heart. Maybe, she said slowly, we both need to learn the difference between being careful and being alone. Something flickered across Adrian's expression, surprise, perhaps, or recognition. Before he could respond, Emma squared her shoulders and made her decision. I want one more clause, she said. If either of us develops real feelings, we tell the other immediately. No lying about that. Not even to ourselves. Adrian's jaw tightened. Emma, that's my condition. Otherwise, this whole thing becomes exactly what Marcus accused me of being. A manipulator. A liar. She held his gaze. I won't be that person, even in a fake relationship. Especially in a fake relationship. For a long moment, Adrian said nothing. Then, slowly he nodded. Agreed. They called Olivia and James back in. The clause was added. The contract was finalized. When Emma signed her name at the bottom, her hand shook only slightly. First public appearance is Saturday, James said, sliding a folder across the table. The Hartwell Charity Gala. Emma, my assistant will coordinate with you about wardrobe, security briefing, and media training. Media training? Emma's voice came out faint. How to deflect invasive questions. What to say about how you met? The narrative we're building. James's expression was kind but firm. You're dating a billionaire now, Emma. People will want pieces of you. We need to teach you how to protect yourself. Emma looked at Adrian, who met her gaze with that same unreadable expression. She'd just sold 6 months of her life to a man she barely knew, and she had no idea if she'd made a brilliant strategic move or a catastrophic mistake. Welcome to my world, Adrian said quietly. Emma thought about her empty bank account, her canceled clients, and Marcus's followers still flooding her Instagram with abuse. She thought about her father, working himself to exhaustion in a warehouse, and her own dreams of a photography studio that felt impossibly distant. Welcome to mine, she replied. The Hartwell Charity Gala made the Sterling event look modest. Emma stood in front of her apartment mirror, barely recognizing herself in the midnight blue gown that had been delivered that afternoon, along with shoes that cost more than her rent and a stylist who'd spent 2 hours on her hair and makeup. The woman staring back at her looked elegant, polished, expensive. Everything Emma had never been. Her phone buzzed. Adrian's car had arrived. The Mercedes SUV was sleek and black, with tinted windows and a driver who opened her door with practiced efficiency. Adrian sat in the back seat, immaculate in a charcoal suit, scrolling through his phone with the focused intensity of someone mentally preparing for battle. He looked up when Emma slid in beside him, and something shifted in his expression. You look, he paused, as if searching for words. Different. Different good or different bad? Different real. His gaze moved over her face, lingering on details. They did your makeup to photograph well. Your hair is styled to withstand scrutiny, but your eyes still show exactly what you're feeling. He said it like a diagnosis. We'll need to work on that. Emma's stomach tightened. Should I have brought my camera? So I can hide behind it. Adrian's expression softened almost imperceptibly. You'll do fine. Just stay close to me. Let me handle the difficult questions. The gala was a tsunami of wealth and power. Emma clutched Adrian's arm as they entered, camera flashes erupting like continuous lightning. Questions were shouted from every direction. Adrian, who's your date? Emma, how long have you been together? Is this serious? Adrian kept moving, his hand at the small of Emma's back, guiding her through the chaos with the ease of someone who'd done this 1,000 times. Inside, the ballroom was even more intimidating than Sterling had been. Everyone was watching them, whispering, judging. Relax, Adrian murmured near her ear. You're trembling. I'm terrified, Emma admitted. Everyone here is worth more than my entire zip code. And everyone here is performing, just like us. The difference is they've had more practice. A woman approached, stunning in a silver gown that probably cost more than Emma's entire wardrobe. Her smile was sharp as cut crystal. Adrian, I didn't realize you'd be bringing a guest. Sophia. Adrian's voice was perfectly polite, perfectly cold. Emma, this is Sophia Monroe. Sophia, Emma Chen. Emma recognized the name from her research. Sophia Monroe, daughter of Gerald Monroe, the woman Adrian was supposed to marry. How lovely to meet you. Sophia's gaze moved over Emma like a scanner, cataloging and dismissing. Adrian didn't mention he was seeing anyone. How did you two meet? At the Sterling Gala, Emma said, fighting to keep her voice steady. It was unexpected. I'll say. Adrian's usually so calculated about his choices. Sophia's smile never wavered. What is it you do, Emma? I'm a photographer. How creative. And you're making a living at that. The question dripped with false concern. How admirable. Though I suppose it helps to have connections now. Her gaze flickered to Adrian meaningfully. Emma felt her face flush, but before she could respond, Adrian stepped closer, his arm sliding around her waist in a gesture that looked protective but felt possessive. Emma's extremely talented, he said, his tone allowing no argument. In fact, I'm considering commissioning her for several corporate projects. Sophia's smile tightened. How fortunate for her. Well, enjoy your evening. I'm sure we'll be seeing more of each other. She glided away, leaving Emma feeling like she'd just survived an assassination attempt by pleasantries. She hates me, Emma whispered. She hates that you exist, Adrian corrected. There's a difference. The evening crawled by in a blur of introductions. Champagne Emma was too nervous to drink, and conversations where she felt perpetually 3 steps behind. Adrian handled it all with practiced ease, occasionally asking her opinion in front of others, forcing people to acknowledge her presence. It was strategic, Emma realized. He was deliberately elevating her status by treating her like an equal. But it was exhausting. By the time they reached the dance floor for the mandatory slow dance, Emma's face hurt from fake smiling. "You're doing well," Adrian said as they swayed to the music. His hand at her waist was steady, guiding her through steps she barely knew. "I feel like an imposter. Everyone here is an imposter. They're just better at hiding it." Emma looked up at him, really looked. His expression was calm, controlled, the perfect mask. But she could see tension in the set of his jaw, exhaustion around his eyes. "This is your life? Constantly performing?" "Since I was 30. Since the company went public and I stopped being a person and started being a brand." "That sounds lonely." Adrian's gaze sharpened on her face, as if she'd surprised him. "It's pragmatic." "It's lonely," Emma repeated. "And you know it, or you wouldn't have needed me to play this role." For a moment, she thought he might argue. Then his expression shifted, became something more honest. "The contract said no lying, remember? Even to ourselves." "Especially to ourselves," Emma said softly. The music swelled around them, and Emma realized they'd stopped merely going through the motions. Adrian was actually dancing with her, and she was actually dancing back, and somewhere in the performance, something real had flickered to life. When the song ended and they stepped apart, paparazzi cameras captured them from every angle. Tomorrow's headlines would declare them the couple of the season. But as Adrian led her off the dance floor, his hand lingering at her waist a moment longer than necessary, Emma wondered if the most dangerous part of this arrangement wasn't the public performance. It was the private moments when they both forgot they were pretending. 3 weeks into their arrangement, Emma had almost adjusted to the rhythm of their carefully orchestrated relationship. Monday evening galas. Wednesday lunch with Adrian's business associates. Friday appearances at gallery openings or charity events. In between, silence. Adrian was meticulous about maintaining boundaries, treating their private interactions with the same professional distance as their contract. Until the night Emma's father fell. She was editing photos in her apartment when her phone rang. Chen's supervisor on the other end, voice tight with apology. Her father had slipped while carrying boxes up a loading dock, landed wrong, and couldn't get up. They'd called an ambulance. He was at Memorial Hospital. Emma grabbed her keys and ran. She forgot about the dinner with tech investors Adrian had scheduled. Forgot about her phone, which she'd left charging on the kitchen counter. Forgot about everything except getting to her father, who'd sacrificed everything to raise her alone and now lay in a hospital bed because his body had finally betrayed him after too many years of brutal physical labor. Daniel looked small in the hospital bed, his face gray with pain, and Emma's chest cracked open. "Dad, I'm fine, sweetheart." His voice was rough, but he managed a weak smile. "Just clumsy. You didn't need to come all the way." "Stop." Emma grabbed his hand, careful of the foreline. "Don't tell me I didn't need to come." They waited together in the fluorescent-lit room while doctors ran tests. X-rays showed a fractured vertebra, aggravating existing damage from years of repetitive stress. The attending physician recommended surgery, physical therapy, months of recovery. The cost estimates made Emma's vision blur. She was sitting in the waiting room, head in her hands, when she heard footsteps. "Emma." She looked up to find Adrian standing there, still in his suit from the investor dinner she'd forgotten. His expression was tight with something that looked almost like anger. "How did you? James tracked your phone location when you didn't show." Adrian's voice was clipped. "I thought something had happened." "Something did happen. My father," Emma's voice broke. She gestured helplessly toward the examination rooms. Adrian's expression shifted, the anger draining away. "Is he all right?" "Fractured vertebra. He needs surgery he can't afford, and physical therapy that will take months, and he still tried to tell me he's fine because that's what he does. He always pretends he's fine." The words tumbled out, fueled by exhaustion and fear. "He worked 2 jobs his entire life, so I could have opportunities he never did. And now his back is destroyed, and I can't even help him because I'm barely keeping myself afloat." "Stop." Adrian sat beside her, closer than their contract required. "What hospital is this?" "Memorial." "What?" Adrian pulled out his phone, typed something, then made a call. "Dr. Morrison?" "Adrian Steele. I need you at Memorial Hospital within the hour. Spinal consultation for Daniel Chen, room 347. Bill my account directly." He ended the call and turned to Emma. "Dr. Morrison is the best orthopedic surgeon in the state. He'll examine your father and determine the best course of treatment. Emma stared at him. Adrian, I can't. It's not charity. It's logistics. Your father needs help. I can provide it. The math is simple. Nothing about this is simple. Emma's voice rose slightly. You're already paying me. I can't take more. Then consider it an advance against future appearances. Adrian's tone was firm. Emma, your father is injured. Let me help. The rawness in his voice stopped her protest. Emma studied his face, seeing past the calculated CO to something more human. Why? Adrian looked away, jaw working. When he spoke, his voice was quieter. Because I remember what it's like to watch someone you love suffer and feel powerless. My parents died in a plane crash when I was 28. Private jet, mechanical failure. They were gone before I could say goodbye. His hands clenched on his knees. I would have paid anything, done anything, to save them. Your father is alive. Let me help keep him that way. Emma's throat tightened. The contract didn't include emotional confessions. No, it didn't. Adrian met her gaze, and for the first time, she saw complete honesty there. No masks. No performance. Just exhaustion and remembered grief. Consider it a breach of terms. Dr. Morrison arrived 40 minutes later and examined Daniel with gentle efficiency. The surgery was scheduled for the following morning. By midnight, Daniel was resting comfortably in a private room, sedated and peaceful. Emma sat beside his bed, holding his calloused hand, tears sliding silently down her face. Adrian had disappeared at some point, giving them privacy. Emma found him later in the hospital cafeteria, staring at terrible coffee he hadn't touched. Thank you, she said, sliding into the chair across from him. I don't know how to repay. You don't. Adrian's voice was flat. That's not how this works. Then how does it work? Because I'm confused about what we're doing here. Adrian was quiet for a long moment. So am I. The honesty hung between them, fragile and dangerous. Emma studied him in the harsh fluorescent light, seeing the exhaustion carved into his features, the loneliness he wore like armor. Tell me something real, she said softly. Not the CEO version. The actual you. Adrian's gaze met Emma's. Building steel technologies consumed my 20s. I thought success would fill the emptiness. It didn't. I'm 32, worth $3 billion, and come home every night to silence. That's the saddest thing I've ever heard, Emma said. When's the last time you did something just because it made you happy? He hesitated. I don't remember. Then trust me. She took him to a rundown diner. For the first time in years, no one recognized him. Over pancakes and burnt coffee, something inside him softened. When Emma asked to photograph him, just for me, he agreed. Through her lens, she saw not the billionaire, but a man aching to be human. You see people, he murmured. It's what I do, she said. You've forgotten how to be human instead of profitable. Adrian smiled faintly. You're dangerous. Because I'm honest. Because you make me want to be. That night, something between them shifted. But by morning, chaos erupted. Leaked documents accusing Emma of exploiting Adrian for money. Fake transfers, forged invoices, headlines calling her a con artist. Death threats followed. Adrian was silent, trapped in a boardroom as his company's stock plummeted. In this relationship, Gerald Monroe demanded, or lose the company. Adrian stared at the lies and thought of Emma's honesty. Find who did this, he told James. Meanwhile, Emma packed to disappear, unwilling to destroy him. Then came the pounding on her door. Don't leave, Adrian said, exhausted. You're the only real thing in my life. You should care about your company. I'm choosing you. I believe you. Tears blurred her vision. I'm falling in love with you. I know. I'm calling a press conference tomorrow to expose them and to tell the world how I feel. The next day, Adrian faced reporters. Chen isn't a con artist, he declared. She reminded me what's real. He revealed proof. Forged documents traced to Marcus Lowe and Sophia Monroe, who had plotted to destroy Emma and force a merger. She's not a liability, Adrian said. She's the woman who taught me that vulnerability isn't weakness, it's truth. The room erupted. Emma, crying, ran to him after the broadcast. I love you, she whispered. I meant every word, he said, holding her as cameras flashed. Adrian narrowly survived the board vote. Sophia and Marcus fell from grace. Emma faced the media with dignity, speaking about online harassment and the weaponization of women's reputations, transforming public opinion. Steel Technologies rebuilt smaller but stronger. Emma's photography career soared. Her exhibit, Authentic Moments, captured real emotion. Her centerpiece, a portrait titled The Man Beneath the Empire. At the opening, Adrian arrived with her father, now recovered. "You saved my life," she told him. "You saved mine first," he said. Months later, they entered a gala together. No contracts, no pretending, only love forged through truth. Cameras flashed, but Emma didn't hide. She smiled, radiant and unguarded. The woman who'd learned that the bravest thing you can do is be seen completely and still be loved. Up next, we have two more incredible stories that are waiting for you. Just click the image you want to watch, and it will take you there. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to subscribe. It would mean a lot.